Marvel has given us some of the most iconic and well-written stories in comic book history, but even the best publishers can stumble. Today on Comic Book Clunkers, we're counting down my thoughts on some of the worst Marvel comic stories of all time. Let's start off with a classic tale of character confusion and messy storytelling. I am referring, of course, to the Amazing Spider-Man's Clone Saga. The Clone Saga is infamous for dragging on for too long and having an overcomplicated Spider-Man plot. Originally intended as a short storyline, it ballooned into a multi-year arc that confused readers with clone upon clone upon clone, identity crises and nonsensical twists. The saga undermined Peter Parker's identity, with writers suggesting that he might not be the real Spider-Man after all, but instead his clone Ben Reilly was the true original. Fans were frustrated with this massive retcon, and the story felt like it lacked a coherent direction, ultimately leaving readers exacerbated. Now, this tale does have some highs, and some people may have thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's fair to say, for most, this was a confusing mess that Spider-Man struggled to climb his way out of for many years. Ben Reilly, mind, he is a pretty cool character, I'll give them that. Now, we'll have a book that makes me physically sick. Ultimatum from 2009. Which was without doubt shock value over substance. Ultimatum, written by Jeff Loeb, was supposed to be a major turning point for the Marvel Ultimate Universe. It ended up being a shock fest, with the writer trying his absolute hardest to upset longtime Marvel fans. The story sees Magneto wreak havoc across the world, killing many beloved characters in gruesome, unnecessary ways. From the death of the Wasp being eaten by the Blob to Doctor Strange being strangled by his own cape, the deaths felt excessive and pointless. Critics and fans alike felt that the story sacrificed good writing in favour of shock, and instead of feeling like an epic event, Ultimatum became known for its unnecessary gore and poorly thought out plot points. Ultimately, see what I did? This story felt mean-spirited and was a sad footnote to the highs of Mark Millar's Ultimates and Bendis' Spider-Man. Sadly, this was a slap in the face for the Ultimate Universe. Now, this one's a little bit odd. Let's talk Avengers 200 from 1980 and that problematic Carol Danvers story. Now, this issue is notorious for how it handled Carol Danvers, aka Miss Marvel, in one of the most controversial and offensive stories in Marvel history. In Avengers 200, Carol is kidnapped. She's brainwashed and forced into a relationship with a man named Marcus, only to inexplicitly then fall in love with her captor. Stockholm Syndrome, what a great idea for a comic book tale. The story made light of what was essentially an assault, with the Avengers bizarrely congratulating Carol and treating the situation like it has a happy ending. Very strange. Fans were outraged by how tone-deaf and insulting this was, and it soon became one of the most regrettable moments in Marvel comic history. Thankfully, later writers addressed this and retconned the story, but sadly the damage was already done. Who on earth thought this was a good idea? This is an Avengers tale that is best forgotten. Oh, Spidey, do Marvel not like you or something? Let's take a look at 2007's One More Day and Spider-Man's deal with Mephisto. Perhaps one of Marvel's most hated Spider-Man stories ever written is One More Day, and it's infamous for its climactic undoing of Peter Parker and Mary Jane's marriage. In this story, Peter makes a deal with Mephisto, Marvel's version of the devil, to save Aunt May's life in exchange for erasing his marriage to Mary Jane from existence. Fans were livid, feeling that the story destroyed years of character development and one of the most beloved relationships in comic books. One More Day has since been viewed as an editorial-driven mistake, with fans still divided on its impact to this day. The idea that readers didn't want to see a happy Peter today feels ridiculous. Many of us had grown up with this guy, We lived his struggles, we felt his pains, and we rejoiced when our hero finally found love and a degree of happiness. To have this ripped from him felt cheap and unnecessary, a move that damaged the character and indeed turned many readers, and myself included, away from Marvel for a number of years. Happily, Peter and Mary are now back in the pages of Ultimate Spider-Man, so screw you, Marvel. Talking of ridiculous character attacks, 1995's The Crossing again sees Marvel trying to appeal to a younger audience by completely screwing over its older characters. The Crossing was a crap fest, particularly for Iron Man fans. The story is a convoluted Avengers tale that completely derailed Iron Man's character. In this crossover event, Tony Stark is revealed to be a secret sleeper agent for Kang the Conqueror, suddenly turning him into a villain who betrays the Avengers. To fix the mess, the Avengers time travel and recruit a teenage version of Tony Stark. The idea being he will defeat his older self, thus giving viewers what Marvel thought they wanted: a younger, hipper hero. MTV has a lot to answer for. You kids and your loud bloody music. The plot was so confusing, the retcon was baffling, the story was dire, and the fans were furious. Iron Man, a hero many of us had grown up with, had been reduced to a mere puppet of Kang. His entire published history was, according to this story, bollocks, and he'd been working against the Avengers for years. Even Marvel seemed to regret this storyline, and it was quietly retconned out of existence years later. Good riddance. It's interesting that Marvel's worst stories often come from misguided editorial decisions, convoluted plots, or ignoring the core of beloved characters. While these stories have their place in comic book history, they serve as a good lesson for how important thoughtful storytelling and respect for the characters are so important. What did you think of my list? Are there any other terrible Marvel stories you'd like to add? Let me know in the comments below, and please do remember to hit that like and subscribe.